Oh,
no.
my head. My head hurts. Look at my face, dude. I am red now.
I have tears in my eyes. He's gonna come back and be like, "You guys look different."
Yeah. Oh, I am.
To John Mulaney, like, "Hey, you look different."
Yeah, I am definitely different now. Brent's gonna enjoy that.
Hello and welcome to the Games That Made Us podcast. I'm Brent. I'm here with my friend Kirk. Say hi, Kirk.
Cheers, everybody.
And I'm also joined again by our good friend Benny. Say hi, Benny.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, just real quick before we get started, I don't want to be a downer. And I do want to like talk about fun things, but just real quick, Akira Toriyama, everybody. Just that one kind of fucked with me. I'm gonna have a small sip of my Voltron Defender of the Universe IPA, which is exactly the kind of goofy shit that I think he would have appreciated.
Absolutely,
for sure.
But yeah, I thought it was ironic and kind of sad that we had just decided that we were going to try and cover Chrono Trigger. And then within
God, I know.
And then within about a week, it's like I'm looking at Discord and I see that he passed. I was like, no. But yeah, so too soon. But an incredible legacy of art that I know touched a lot of people. So at least we'll have that. And I searched for way too long to find some Chrono Trigger related meme from when Chrono died to try and encapsulate the moment. And after about 30 minutes of digging through screenshots of Chrono Trigger, I was like, I'm being too much of a millennial even for me.
Yeah.
So I think I need to move on.
We'll cover that in more detail later, but the reality of Chrono Trigger is that it's Chrono's death is not, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Is not the significant moment that you'd think it would be, because it's really not significant to the game.
Yeah. Yep.
In its entirety, let's say.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
That's why you got boring shit, Brent.
Yay! Well, all right. Hey, before we dive into today's topic, I just want to do a real quick round robin like we frequently do and just kind of check in with what we've been playing lately. I think I know what the answer is going to be, but I'm interested to see. Kirk, do you want to tell us a little bit about what's been on your plate gaming wise?
Oh man, it's been nothing but Helldivers 2. I was interested in it anyways, but the other primary reason I've kind of pushed everything else to the side because this doesn't happen very often. But the stepson is also really, really into this game. And there's not a lot of games that he and I play together, and he really wants to play this game together with me. So, of course, trying to be a good parent, I played quite a bit with him. Hell, I was up till about 2-3 a.m. this morning playing with him, which is unfortunate because today is also daylight savings. So 1 to 2 a.m. is like 3 to 4 a.m. suddenly. So I'm tired, but I'm still happy that I get to play the game with him, and along with everybody else too. Everybody is playing that damn game, so that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, I was talking to Sean and Megan last night as well about it, and it seems like that one's kind of blowing up, but that's awesome. And it's always fun when there's something that you can do kind of cross generationally. That's been one of the reasons why, and I know I mentioned this before, but it's been one of the reasons why I've stuck with Breath of the Wild as long as I have, is because Aislin's been so into it. I finally beat the fourth
Guardian
Beast or whatever.
Yeah, the fourth mythical beast or whatever, and I grabbed the Master Sword. So then I ran to Hyrule Castle and immediately ate shit. So I'm not quite ready yet. Yeah. But yeah. What about you, Benny?
I I yearn to play Helldivers, and I will get to that with buying the house and everything, and that being forthcoming clusterfuck of projects. That'll be hopefully soon. But lately, I've been playing Death Stranding.
Awesome!
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah! What do you think?
I love it. It's so weird and so good.
Yes,
it's Kojima. It's Kojima, like start to finish, top to bottom.
Yeah, it's so bizarre, but yeah, I absolutely love it. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, well, we could go off on it. That could be.
Oh, there's a lot there.
Yeah, that could be its own podcast, but that's a really fun one.
Well, Kirk can play it, and we can do it.
There we go. Yeah, I actually, this is totally me, but I haven't actually finished it. I got past the Rockies. I'm most of the way through. I just need to go back and finish the last, 5 to 10 hours of the game. But
I'm probably right before that stage.
Yeah.
I love this mechanic. I'm such a solipsist. I built a whole set of highways in an area where no one in the game, like in the collective game world where other players around, real people around the world are doing things.
Sure.
No one had done it, and so I completed a transcontinental highway for a specific section, and I'm just running around there absorbing all the thousands of likes that people are dropping on me as a result.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's really like I said, I'm a solipsist. It's all about me, man.
Well, no, and I think that's so funny because I play, even multiplayer games, I play like it's a single player game. And so It's so funny hearing that totally different perspective where you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to try and build this and engage with what's happening outside of my own, experience with the game. And I'm like, nah, I ran right past every other player and every other... I like the asynchronous multiplayer of Death Stranding quite a bit. I think it's a good idea, but I also didn't really engage with it at all.
I had not until that moment when so what happened was I built 6 lengths of highway and just collected all these resources and just built them and logged out for the night. And then I logged in the next day to play a little bit and just had tens of thousands of likes waiting for me. And I was like, oh, well. And there's a commentary in the game about this, so I won't get into it too much. But I got that serotonin bump a bit.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Well, I've been playing a much smaller game. Although that said, it has just an insane amount of content. I've been playing a lot of What the Golf. Are you guys familiar with What the Golf?
No.
Okay. So What the Golf is this small indie game that it's got this cell shaded N64-esque kind of style graphics, very simple polygonal graphics. And when you first boot into it, you're like, oh, okay, it's just a very simple, almost childlike golf game where, there's the hole, you use the analog stick and you swing and you try and put the ball in the cup. And then it immediately starts subverting expectations. I think the second level of the game is you move the analog stick and instead of the ball, it fires the golfer towards the hole with ragdoll physics, and they smack into trees and shit like that. And the entire game is just thousands and thousands and thousands of golf holes with a very thin plot about exploring this computer lab of this shady corporation, I think, that was trying to make golf fun.
This sounds magical.
It's absolutely insane. Each sort of subsection of the game has a theme to it. So, for example, I was playing, there's a bowling theme where it kind of twists golf into bowling in many ways. And the music that plays is it's sort of like Katamari Damacy-esque in that it's a lot of the music is vocals, it's a cappella music. And a lot of the music for the bowling level is a cappella versions of songs from The Big Lebowski.
It's ridiculous.
It's so insane. The game has an obsession with cats and bombs. There's cats and bombs everywhere. Frequently, you're asked to blow up cats or to avoid blowing up cats. It's again, like I'm you know me, I'm a big proponent of and fan of these like weird little indie games. I think this is a $15 $15 game. You can pick it up on Steam, you can pick it up on Switch, you can pick it up on, I'm sure, also the other platforms that I don't give a shit about, but it's for sure on the two that matter. Highest recommendations for What the Golf. I've put 90 some hours into it, and I'm nowhere close to the end of the game.
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah. Damn.
I mean, it's kind of you had me at cats and bombs.
Yeah. So hey, I'll do my normal plug. It's $15. So for $20, get What the Golf and Vampire Survivors, and you've got like hundreds of hours of gameplay.
And Graveyard Keeper, get that one too.
Yeah, I have to pick that one up. Yeah, I like now both you guys have recommended it. So
it's great. That's what was taking up my time before Helldivers. I got lost in the grave, so to speak.
Nice.
Yeah. It's a brain worm, and it will compel you.
Nice. Anytime anybody talks about like graveyards in video games, I immediately like go to Dompe from Ocarina of Time. Like that's my first thought, and I'm just like, I love that guy. He's so like creepy and cute, and it makes me happy. And with that, our topic today is First Encounter Assault Recon. Hey, I got it right. Which is a 2005 first-person shooter from Monolith Productions. Oh my god, I'm on top of this today. I know all the things. Which was brought to us by Kirk. Kirk, do you want to tell us a little bit about F.E.A.R. and kind of your history with the game and why it was one that you wanted us to talk about on the podcast?
Yeah, sure. So F.E.A.R. came out the same time all of us we were in college. I think just entering in college, and it came out roughly the same time as Half-Life 2. So you kind of had, I don't want to say like renaissance of what a standard of game should be at that point in time, but they were definitely both impactful as far as either graphics or physics, storytelling, gameplay, what have you. And
Sure.
F.E.A.R. stood out just because it was getting just all sorts of praise for its AI in specific,
Right.
being borderline revolutionary at the time. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then also, they were pretty much the game that perfected the use of bullet time or reflex time, whatever you want to call it. Because they're, I think, Matrix came out in, I think, 99? I don't recall. But obviously,
I think that's right.
People have been trying to implement that in video games, and not even Matrix could do that right in video games. So here comes F.E.A.R., and they really did kind of perfect that. And it had... I always felt like the game, because of the AI, was so incredible. I never felt like I was playing the same game twice, necessarily. Like, I would recognize certain areas in fighting arenas, but the enemies were so wildly unpredictable, you were never going to go into the same fight twice.
And that's notable because the game is fairly linear in its construction, in its pathing. You only have one choice of path. I mean, there may be minor deviations within a specific zone, but ultimately you're following a rail. So to make that feel that experience feel unique each pass through is notable.
Yep. And just and just story wise, just so the listeners can kind of follow along with what it's all about, because I mean we can go and just start talking about gameplay and mechanics and whatever, but
Sure.
To anyone who's ever played it, they're just like, oh well, what's going on? But the game is called F.E.A.R. First Encounter Assault Recon, like Brent was saying, and you play part of a kind of like a special forces team, and the whole point of this particular special forces team is to go out and investigate like paranormal weirdness and etc. So you play as a character who's just usually referred to as the point man, and you are dropped in with another group of special force soldiers to kind of investigate some weird occurrences, and then all hell breaks loose. Right. You encounter this small, I would say she's Japanese. I mean, very Asian looking. I mean, she looks like the girl from The Ring. Like, come on. Right. It's the girl from The Ring wearing a very bright, nice jacket.
Yeah. And it's the girl from The Ring wearing the red coat from
Schindler's List, you sick bastard.
Schindler's List. Yeah.
Yep. And you kind of find out along with her, and then there's another character, Paxton Fettel, who are the cause of all these paranormal disturbances, and at the same time, what kind of separates them is the game almost has like two different antagonists at any given moment. But Paxton also has the same kind of psychic abilities as the little girl does, but maybe not to the same extent. And what Paxton Fettel does is he is psychologically or psychically linked to all these clone soldiers, and that's who you end up fighting throughout the game. But instead of me just rambling on and on and on and whatnot, I'm going to let someone else take the next chunk and talk about J-horror or what it clearly is.
Well, no, and so first off, Paxton Fettel is the best villain name in video game history. Like, I think that's like bookmark. Everyone else is just running to catch up to how badass a name Paxton Fettel is. And when I played through this game the first time, which I did play this game for the first time for this podcast, I did seriously consider maybe we need to rethink the only having two kids thing, just so that I can have a third and name them Paxton Fettel. Even though that's not my last name, I just think that's probably needs to happen.
Daddy, why is my name different? Don't worry about
it. Don't worry about it. Why are there a bunch of like middle-aged FPS fans constantly sending me messages? It's like it's fine.
It's less creepy than it seems, trust me.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's more creepy. I don't know.
But only slightly, yeah.
It could be way worse, given the events of later in the game.
Yeah. Oh, shit. Yeah, and we will get into plot. Yeah. So much foreshadowing. We will get into plot more later, but so yeah, I had never played this game before. I'm not really an FPS guy. I had certainly played some. Like we had talked about on the Alpha Centauri episode, for a big stretch of my childhood and teen years, I was kind of PC primary. And I think growing up in the 90s and early 2000s as like PC primary, you couldn't avoid FPS games. They were the flagship games of that platform. But I wasn't very good at them. And I also have always kind of been into kind of cute, goofy games. And there was a huge amount of very sort of brown and red, gritty, edgelordy kind of content that I never really engaged with in that era. A lot of kind of the sort of Quake style shooter and its aftermath. So this wasn't a game that I'd ever played before, but when I picked it up on Kirk's suggestion, I was immediately struck by what he mentioned right away, which was the AI of it. Because so just like Kirk and Benny were saying, it's an FPS game with a very linear progression. You're following Paxton Fettel, and sort of following through a convoluted corporate espionage kind of plot to try and find out why these like clone soldiers are doing what they're doing, and why Paxton Fettel is doing what he's doing, what the motivations are, and what the ultimate plan is of this group of evil soldiers. And it takes...
And then also, what's the whole point of Alma? Like, why is this... Yeah, oh, that's her name, by the way. Like, the little Japanese girl, where does she fit in all this? So that's part of it, too, while also investigating Paxton.
Exactly. And I don't know that it's ever outright said, but it's at least heavily implied that you're really the only one who's seeing Alma. Because none of the other characters ever really mention her. At least until you get deeper into the game.
And no one who survives in any case.
Yeah. Well, no one who doesn't wind up splattered all over the walls.
Yeah, I think that
never mentions Alma.
It's fair to mention that the gameplay leverages some pretty gnarly violence in a very good way. You might... I've said it before. One of my favorite quotes from Sir Terry Pratchett, and I think it's Guards, refers to turning a person into quote unquote so much geography, and I think that's exactly what happens to some of these poor human bodies in this game, and it makes for some really stark contrasting moments in a visual sense and in a kind of a chilling plot sense, because a lot of the game is spent traipsing, climbing, navigating office buildings and warehouses and a fairly industrial or corporate motifs, and then periodically interspersed with really unsettling amounts of supernatural gore. It punctuates the plot moments too. I think they're very well used.
Yeah, so two quick things off of that. So first off, I think more than any other game that we've covered up to this point, I would definitely trigger warning this game. This game has way more violence in it, than anything else that we've played up to this point. It is far more graphic, and then some of the not directly seen but implied sexual violence and abuse of children in it is really, really grotesque and horrible. This is not a game that I would recommend to anyone who has any sort of issues with any of that content, because it pushes the boundaries of what I found I was comfortable with, and I'm a pretty big horror movie fan. So yeah, that's point one. Point two, in terms of the effectiveness of the horror in a game called F.E.A.R, I did think that one of the areas that it was very effective was, just like what you were saying, Benny, turning these areas that are very familiar. I mean, I think one of the tricks that a good horror film director often can use is turning the familiar unfamiliar, like turning something that is every day and making it bizarre or unsettling. And I think the choice of setting a lot of this game in office buildings, a place that unfortunately a lot of us are very familiar with, was really good, because there was a lot of, by the end of the game, it made traipsing around a big corporate office building into a much scarier experience than it often is.
And probably somewhat
for other reasons other than just the dehumanization of corporate America.
And I think you could definitely view a bit of an allegorical view of and not to get too let's not get into political philosophy and all that.
Let's.
Shit. Oh God, let's not too deeply, but in any case,
okay.
But I mean, you could definitely view it as a pretty, I mean, not even an allegory, but just a straight up metaphor for how corporate America and all of the awful things that happened in the past in this game and that are in situ are all the result of dealings, negotiations, business decisions in these same structures. Like the commodification of people could be argued to be a component of the game. And so I think I have some major problems with how this plot works, but I think there are some really cool ways that it works too.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Going off what Benny said, a lot of that plot, I do enjoy how, instead of them, with a lot of exposition and talk from other people, like on your own, your fire team or what have you, they do it through voicemails on desk phones in these office buildings. Yeah. So a lot of times you'll see a waiting message at these phones on the desks in the office buildings or on a wall or wherever. And you listen to the voicemail and you hear these dealings and you hear about, people protesting what's going on, like internal employees that are like, this is kind of, fucked up and sick. And I really like how they utilize, the environment itself to help get that story across. I think if you had another member of your team or something else try to tell you, I just don't think it would impact you the same way as hearing it in a voicemail or reading an email on a TV screen or on a computer screen. It just wouldn't be the same.
Yeah. No, 100%. Like that was something that I really liked as well. Although it kind of presented a problem for me. I'm laser focused on the end of any video game that I play, and not just ones that I'm playing with a deadline, like for the podcast. Just any game. Put a game in front of me, and I'm like, okay, how long do until I can fucking get to the end? I just want to get to the fucking end. I want to see the end, and then I want to be fucking done. Like I have an issue with that. And so
very much a destination, not the journey kind of guy, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever played Journey? Don't.
Okay. I missed a lot of that kind of stuff. And so just, FYI for how I experienced this game. I went through it, I played it, and then I later sat down and watched a playthrough of it because I was like, there's a lot of this shit that I felt like I missed. Like, are there gaps in this game that I just missed because I was just barreling through it as fast as I could? And so I watched 100% playthrough of it.
And the answer was resoundingly yes.
Well, the answer was resoundingly maybe. Like, there's definitely, like, even on a 100% playthrough, there's definitely some stuff that the game leaves to your imagination or
sure.
leaves the player to kind of fill in. Which is fine. I don't have an issue with that. But, it expects a little more of you than just... it expects a little bit more of a detective mindset and a little bit less of a... It doesn't expect you to play it like Doom. It doesn't expect you to just like, where's the bad guys? Let me shoot them all.
I think there is quite a bit of subtext hidden in those... in those voice messages, and and don't forget the sick Alienware laptops.
Right.
I think there's a lot of subtext that, or at least contextualizing conversations that give you an idea of some of the backstory, and maybe I know what you're saying. I don't think that you necessarily like even get all of the motivations that for some of these things, you don't necessarily get all of the details of even what happened, but there are some things that you'll learn about, previous projects that have nothing to do with the current events, other than that they were precursors that you wouldn't find out about if you didn't listen to those. You wouldn't hear about them at all.
And I definitely preferred it to just a straight up and down, like Kirk was saying, just somebody coming in over your headset and just, exposition dumping at you. Mm-hmm. Hey, we've learned that such and such did such and such and da-da-da-da-da. Like, not to slam Metal Gear Solid, which I'm also playing through right now, but that was Kojima's solution in Metal Gear Solid, is just like have the general call you and explain the plot to you while you're playing. And
actually, there is something I have been meaning to tell you, but I just couldn't. I think you should know, though. On Saturday morning last week, I saw a guy leaving Rosemary's room. How should I put it? It was like they were intimate. I'm sorry. Sorry to bring this up during the mission, but...
that's a little clunky. This was a little bit more elegant.
Yeah, and then I still really like listening to the voicemails in this game in particular, just because the game creeps you out so much when you're listening to the voicemails, because there's usually so much action from room to room. And when you have to stop and listen to a voicemail in a very, a closed office building, and it's all dark, like, you're listening to the voicemail, but you're also listening to the environment around you and constantly turning around and checking corners, just because, the game scares the hell out of you at any given moment, which is part of the gameplay itself. And then the flashlight that they give you runs out. Like, it's not like a persistent flashlight, which also goes into the game mechanics. But when when you're building that kind of atmosphere, just listening to a voicemail in the game, it definitely puts you into a different mindset than if you were listening to it in a brightly lit area.
Yeah, and so let's dive into that a little bit when you're talking about kind of gameplay mechanics. So you can use is it reaction time is the name?
Reflex
time.
Reflex time.
So I think the way that the game separates itself in terms of gameplay is through the reflex system. I think that everything else kind of plays in a somewhat formulaic fashion, except that you have this superhuman ability, this mechanic that really that sets the gameplay apart by changing the way that you would tactically approach encounters. Because in a lot of other FPSs of the time, your Calls of Duties is and your Halos is.
I think you'll find it's Halo's Eye.
Oh yes, my Latin is a little rusty. You can certainly, if you're a 360 no-scope edgelord, I'm sure that you can tackle one of those games with absolute aggression and just have a fine time of it. But I find, being a fairly average human of the Homo sapiens persuasion, that I have to be somewhat tactical and defensive at times in those games. You know, let your overshield recharge, or you yourself take a moment to flank an enemy, or however that manifests. But in F.E.A.R, I found, for me, my best tactic was absolute and overwhelming aggression, immediately leveraging the reflex mechanic, because the enemy AI is so good that I found that eliminating half or more of the immediate force I was encountering in the first burst of reflex before it ran out, and then retreating, was oftentimes my best way to survive without taking too much damage or running out my armor. Because that is another mechanic that one component of the loadout that we haven't touched on yet is that there are ways to augment your gameplay through care, a little bit of extra searching. You have armor that can augment your health, that reduces the amount of damage to your health you take. There's also ways to boost your overall burn time of your reflex and your overall health level. Those are beneficial, but ultimately optional. I found that the AI and the enemies are so precise that they will carve you down immediately if you give them the opportunity. So the reflex, I think, maybe it would be an extraordinarily difficult game without that. Maybe that's,
To your point, because I played much the same way that you did, if you weren't really going after them because the AI was so good, because and we mentioned it obliquely before, but the AI in this game is so good that even 19 years later, playing this for the first time, I felt like I was being tactically overmatched by these AI characters. The clone soldiers will react to your play style and will appear to sort of plan out a response, and that's furthered by the fact you can actually hear them cross-chattering back and forth on their radio, which winds up being really nice and saved my ass several times because, I knew what they were about to do. But there were so many times where in a normal FPS game, I would feel comfortable, I'm just going to flank these guys, and they'll just stay where they are, and everything will be fine. And then I'll turn around, and there's 3 of them behind me, because they reacted dynamically to the way I was playing and kicked my fucking ass. And so, I think to your point, Benny, like the reflex time makes it so that a mere mortal can actually play this game. Because if it wasn't there, I think you'd have to actually be a fucking SWAT team member to be able to play this game successfully. The enemy AI really does feel that dynamic and that aggressive. But Kirk, I know we've talked about this AI system before, and I don't know if you wanted to go into a little more detail on it.
Yeah, of course. So, and I'll try to explain it in a way where our listeners can understand it. Not calling them out, saying that they're dumb or anything like that. But like Benny and I in our professional lives were like high-level IT employees. So when we talk nerd, we understand nerd. Not everybody listening is going to understand it, and it might be boring. But I can at least try to use examples from other games or what have you to help get the point across on how this AI functions and how it works versus other games.
Right.
So, F.E.A.R was the first game to use what's called a GOP, or Goal-Oriented Action Planning. And what makes that different is the enemies themselves have a set of instructions that they can do at any given moment. Whereas a normal game, each event is going to be heavily scripted in the background. Like a programmer has manually, scripted out this event in case XYZ thing happens. So to use a good example, the very first Halo game, you're Master Chief and you throw a grenade at the feet of, let's say, an elite enemy. The elite will predictively dive out of the way every single time. They won't run away, they won't try to find cover, they will dive out of the way every single time. Just by that, you can tell that is a heavily scripted event. That's something they are going to do all the time, because that's how that AI programming works. How F.E.A.R works is a lot different. So each enemy, because of the GOP system that they, pretty much developed, they have something like 70 different goals that each NPC or each enemy can do at any given second. And then each goal uses a combination of like 120 different actions, if I remember correctly from my notes. And so you just put that math together of just at any given calculation or any given second of the game, all of those actions are available to that NPC or that enemy. So whereas I used Halo as the example of throwing a grenade and the elite always diving out of the way predictably, these enemies may dive out of the way because they may think that is the best thing to do at that given moment in time. Sure. Or they could dive through a window. They could think, there's the charge on the grenade hasn't burned up enough, so they will try to run away rather than diving away. Or they may try to throw a grenade back. Like, there's all sorts of different things that the AI can do because of the GOP system.
They could try to confuse you by running away more.
Yeah. Because each NPC is part of the system. They do have a sense of self-preservation at the same time. So their goals will actively change based on other information, like have they been hit? Where have they been hit? where are they currently standing right now? Where is the player standing at this given second? So each one of their goals and any of the actions available to them may change. They will change, as quickly as the game will process.
Yeah.
So it really brings the enemies alive, so to speak. Like, they're very, very intelligent as a result. So instead of it being heavily scripted where you have an action that's going to be predictable every single time.
For sure.
Like I brought up why I love the game so much is because the AI is so smart, it feels like you're not having the same encounter every single time you play the game. It's always going to be different because the AI is always going to do something different.
There's a lot of dynamism in the game. I played about the first half on my own, and then I started it over to see if my wife would have any interest in watching it with me, and played about the same first half before I just needed to finish up for the podcast, and she was kind of more just interested in hearing the plot summary at the end. But my first two playthroughs could not have been more different of that first half of the game. So, if you wipe out half of the squad immediately, their tactics change immediately at that point. Whereas if you manage to wing 3 of them, but only take one of them out, and you're fighting 5 or 6, they're going to behave with both more aggression, but also some caution because some of them have been injured. They really are very dynamic enemies.
The understanding the game has of the injury level of the characters and what they're still capable of doing is really shocking for a game from 20 years ago. Because, you'll shoot somebody in the knee, they'll go down, and they're still very much in the fight. They'll be crawling away with, pushing off with one arm, firing their gun still. You haven't won just because you've put a bullet in one of the bad guys. And for somebody who has a very shaky grasp on the FPS genre, this one, I don't know, it really made me rethink it. It really made me go, okay, maybe there's a depth here that I hadn't really ascribed to it prior. And particularly the way the AI, the injury detection, and the sound design all meshed together made it feel like such a living, breathing experience. The way the fear level, the fear level, that's the name of our game. The fear level in the clone soldiers would go up as you're sniping them off. You'll hear some guy, one of them on the radio going, "Where is he? I can't see him." Oh no, we lost 2 of our guys. When you were really successful, when you were kicking their ass, it felt like that scene in Aliens when the whole squad's getting picked apart. It's where's Bowski? Yeah. Where's Hudson? Where's Hicks? They're coming out of the fucking walls, man.
Where's Bowski? Where's Bowski? Let's rock! Coming out of the goddamn wall! What?
I love that. And before we move off of it, then I like to talk about sound a little bit too.
Yeah.
Because I think let's call it diegetic sound and non-diegetic sound.
Ooh.
I know we're getting fancy now.
Ooh, college words.
They gave me a piece of paper that I spent a lot of money on. So the sound design in general, the player's experience is pretty impressive for the time. I think that I just wanted to talk about it because I love the way a 5-gallon bucket sounds when you knock it off a shelf.
Yes.
It's
oh
really,
my God. Yeah.
It really is convincing. You can encounter some in early parts of the stages of the game, but because it's realistic, and if you're in a moment of tension as you're seeing one of Paxton Fettle's phantoms, disappear around a corner, and you're wondering what the hell's going to happen in the next instant, and then some paint can or 5-gallon bucket or block falls off a shelf, it keeps you on your toes, especially because they're very realistically sampled sounds. And we can pivot back if we need to on any of that, but also in terms of the AI, I love that they're not aware of the game being played around them. I love that the AI is not constantly aware of the player's position. You play a more modern game, and there's no way that enemy 200, 300 yards away can tell that you're scoping in on where their head might be when they pop out, but they know you're doing it anyway because they're in a video game.
Right.
And I hate that. But in this game, they're isolated from anything other than their own perception. And so if they haven't perceived you, they haven't heard you, so I love leveraging that mechanic to fight them. I love throwing if they know you're there, they're not going to rush in over the mine that you've thrown to trap them. But if they haven't seen you throw the mine, or they haven't heard, anything other than that initial sound, I love baiting enemies in.
Yeah.
That's very satisfying.
You're right, though, about the sound also being included in the AI as a whole, or just a good reflection of how well it works. Because if you knock over that really cool sounding, if you knock over that really cool sounding 5-gallon bucket, and an enemy is close enough to hear that, they're going to say, what was that? Go check it out. Right. And they will tactically address that situation, because they're not like a typical dumb enemy in a game where it's just like, oh, I better go by myself and check this out. Like, no, they'll move as a squad to go check it out, and because they're not ever going to be convinced that it was nothing, like you see in a lot of games, like, oh, I guess it was nothing, then pretend it just never happened. Yeah. No, they're very aware it happened, and they know they're like, there's nobody else in the building. Shit just doesn't fall over like that.
That's very Metal Gear Solid. Talking to Brent here, I'm gonna walk 5 feet this way. Must have been nothing. Back to my rounds.
Right. Yeah.
Like the AI system is so damn good in this game that it's still the GOP system is still used today in a lot of AAA games. So just keep that in mind. For anyone who wants to jump and play this game, like, it's still used today for a reason. Yeah. And basically, if you didn't have the reflex time, the game will punish you. Yeah. Big time.
Yeah. And this will shock absolutely no one. But for the first, hour-ish of the gameplay, I didn't use the reflex time at all, because I was like, oh, no, that's fine. It's the gameplay mechanics. Who likes those? I'm just going to shoot things. And, turns out even the first hour of that game is real hard without reflex time.
Yeah, the enemy AI will punish you for not utilizing your reflex time.
Yeah.
Because they are smart and they have numbers.
Yes, yeah. I wanted to just double down on, we were talking about sound and how it dovetails off of and meshes with the gameplay elements, but I really liked the world building aspect of the sound. That some of this game is played in underground tunnels. A lot of it's played in office buildings. It was very obvious that the Foley artists and the individuals who were working on developing the sound font, for lack of a better term, for this game really cared and really put the time and effort into it, because it felt like everywhere you were, it immediately had that sort of fingerprint of the soundscape of where it was, and I really loved that. And particularly in a game that is meant to inspire fear and inspire dread in the player, I thought they did a really good job of just slowly ratcheting up the tension with the music. There's a lot of, little creaks, little whispers, and just sort of texture to the soundscape that does a lot of heavy lifting. It built dread the right way, and I just thought that was really great. Like, the soundscape of it was I thought really cool.
Yeah, Yeah, and the composer for the game was Nathan Grigg. Not everybody's gonna know that name, but if you've played like the very newest Mortal Kombat game that just came out, Nathan Grigg. I read about this his technique that he used when creating a lot of the music for the game. Depending on where you're at, kind of influenced what instruments he would use and what sound he was going to try to bring across. Where like let's say for instance you were in part of the office building that was still like being built, or you're in a suite that was being refurbished or whatever. Well, based on that area, like if it was being refurbished and there was scaffolding or whatever laying around, he would create the music for that area by doing things like clanging metal tools against pieces of scaffolding, or dragging a cinder block across the ground, or any number of things. Yeah. Throwing a cool sounding 5-gallon bucket on the floor, sampling a lot of that, and then creating music either with that or around that type of sound. So it really helps draw you in as far as atmosphere, where you have music that was made with things you would find in that environment. I think it just adds that little extra something.
And contributes to, as you said, like building tension, and something that you have to do very well to make a convincing horror game. And I think we're not going to get out of this without talking about the horror elements of this game and how those function. And eventually we're going to have to talk about plot. But yeah, but I think, I am interested in talking about horror.
Yeah, so like for me, and this is like, to be completely honest, I didn't find this game particularly scary. Okay. Which I know is like, and I don't, I hate saying that because I know that it's sort of like, it's in the world of, horror video games, that's sort of like me going out and saying, oh yeah, The Exorcist isn't that scary, which I also don't think The Exorcist is particularly scary, but that's a different conversation for a different time. But I will say that the appearance of Alma was, I think, one of the more affecting points. Like I think they got it right when they used, to your point from earlier, when they used Alma in sort of a Japanese horror style, like creeping dread way. Like for me, one of the moments that did genuinely like cause me to jump out of my fucking seat was there's a moment, it's probably like a third of the way through the game. You're walking down a long hallway. I'm describing half the fucking game. You're walking down a long hallway in an office. There's a darkened room. Yeah, okay, that's the whole fucking game. But you're walking down a long hallway in a darkened office building, and there's a sheet of glass to your right. And the power comes back on, and the light's on in the office to your right. And Alma is, the little girl, is right there. I mean, she's 2 feet away from you through that plate glass window. She's not looking at you. She's not aggressive towards you, which she often isn't in her little girl form, which we can talk about more when we get to plot. But just the shock value of that, I thought, was very effective. In terms of the overall horror of the game, I think my issue with it is that I felt a little bit too powerful. Like my player avatar felt a little bit too powerful for me to feel consistently scared. Like Paxton Fettel, I never really felt like was much of a threat. I felt like he was honestly kind of comical at times with like the cannibalism and stuff, which again we can get to in the plot section. But Alma was scary enough for sure, but she's not present in the game very frequently. And the clone soldiers, I felt like I was engaging with, like I was like, yeah, that's like I wasn't scared in Rainbow Six either. Like so I do think the sound design was great. I think there were times where Alma was used very effectively. But yeah, in terms of this being like a scary game, it kind of let me down there.
And it's kind of a tale of two games. If you kind of think about it that way, you could have, it almost feels like a horror experience tacked onto a first-person shooter.
Yeah.
Because you could very easily break the game into a first-person shooter and then a first-person visual novel horror game, and they would function entirely separate from one another just fine.
Yeah,
and so there are elements of this game that feel slightly, to me, they feel incomplete or maybe rushed, not fully integrated.
Yeah,
that's interesting. That's what's the word I'm trying to use? It's funny to me that you were saying how you like horror, you're a horror fan, and then you're like, yeah, this game isn't that scary, and I kind of wonder if time might be the culprit.
Yeah.
Because you've never played it up until now,
right?
And you're used to modern games. Like if you play like the Dead Space remake now, I mean, you're gonna be like, oh shit, this is scary. But then maybe 20 years from now, you're like, oh, the game, and you play it for the first time 20 years from now, you'd be like, oh, it's not so scary because there's probably something else way more horrifying than that game, which is kind of scary to think about.
Yeah,
but
yeah, I probably 2 years ago, I played through Alien Isolation, and so like I was constantly comparing this to that, and I'm like, yeah, like this isn't that scary, and it's like, well, that's also completely unfair, right? Like there's different kinds of fear and dread, and I think the sense that I got of like, well, I'm too powerful, it's like, well, it's also an FPS game, like you have to be capable in an FPS game, or it's,
well, you're also
game.
There's also a dichotomy there too, right? Where you are overwhelmingly more powerful than any of the clone soldiers that you encounter.
Sure.
Without the reflex time, you can make an argument there, but with the reflex time, you're going to wipe the floor with them 99 times out of 100, maybe 999 times out of 1,000. You're going to resoundingly win, and probably the only time you lose in the game situation, like in the gameplay, is when you're being conservative with ammo or just being careless. By contrast,
and then the AI punishes you for doing
that. By contrast, you have no agency where Alma's concerned. She is a blender into which you can stick your hand. That's the only relationship you have to her at any point in the game.
Oh no, absolutely. I don't think that's wrong at all.
I really like the example that you used with when the power comes back on. She's like standing right there at the glass. And one that gets referenced all the time is when you're kind of in the maintenance sewery kind of part of the office building, and you press the button to climb down the ladder, and as your character turns around, to put his hands on the ladder rungs, Alma is standing right there.
Yes.
Right there, right where you were just standing, and that's, I really like those little moments where, especially with the young girl Alma, where she's always, for the most part, very passive and very just agnostic towards your existence. Like there's, I think, little girl Alma only really attempts to hurt you just like a couple of times in the game. Like there's the one where the hallway's like exploding.
Yeah, that's the only one that comes immediately to mind.
But that whole part is heavily scripted anyways. But I really don't think she was trying to attack you. I think she's just trying to blow up the damn building and doesn't care that you happen to also be in it.
And if you're not a complete dumbass like Brent and you like back away from her, she doesn't make any attempt to kill you. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I gotta try and shoot her then. And it's like, that turns out to be the wrong approach.
Yep. Whereas, okay, so you have the little girl Alma and the red pea coat.
Yeah.
And then you have teenage Alma, who is naked and looks like she's covered in blood, and then also like like axle grease is what it kind of looks like, but it just makes her look super dirty at the same time, which just adds to the creepiness. Now, I really like how, even though it really doesn't make a lot of sense as far as plot and what have you, I liked how the little girl was more passive to creep you out. where the teenager, just like in real life, it goes out of their way to piss you off.
Far more violent, yeah.
Far more violent, yeah. Like, I feel like the interactions with teenage Alma are far more aggressive as far as how they spook you with her versus the little girl version. Yeah. Whereas little girl Alma will just stand there and just be, spooky and off-putting. The teenager will, like, crawl at you across the ceiling to try to freak you out.
Again, like real little girls. Just stand there being off-putting, yeah.
Yeah. And I like how they tie in just not just them being spooky, but the environment too. Like in your example, how the power goes out on it just unexpectedly and then comes back on. She's right there, but that they will use the environment and then they'll use the HUD itself to also freak you out. How your entire HUD will start to flicker and you'll hear a hissing sound, radio static, and then your HUD will be fine again. Again, going back to the environment, you'll see like a light bulb suddenly start, moving back and forth on its own and flickering and being weird, or you'll see a bunch of rats suddenly, take off running in different directions. I think they really effectively utilize that just to keep you on your toes, because every time that happens, it doesn't mean Alma or somebody else is going to come up and try to just scare the shit out of you. Sometimes nothing happens at all.
I think Alma kind of manifests in two ways in terms of how she interacts with you as well, where like little girl Alma is more like a component of the environment and kind of represents what is scary about what you can't control or what you can't influence, where she exists. She's not malicious, but she is present and you can't control her, and the suddenness of her appearance is really what's unsettling. She's clearly always there, but not always manifesting, and that is, it probably feels threatening to the human eye that there's something there that you can't see, like fundamental fear, in the brain. Whereas teenage Alma is just arguably berserk, and
you can't ground me. Get out of my room.
Exactly. Arguably trying to turn you into a meat popsicle. So I think that
just like what is it, Corbin? Oh my God, what?
Corbin Dallas.
Yeah, Corbin Dallas. Negative. I'm a meat popsicle.
Yes.
Yeah, sir. Do you identify as human? Negative.
Fantastic. I mean, she's constant. She is actually violent, and the way that the world changes around you is, well, she's no longer really part of the environment so much as she is an active character and an active player at that point. So there's really a transition in how she impacts the feel and the ambiance of the situation.
I think you put it best. That I never thought about it that way. That's really kind of brilliant. How little girl Alma is more like passive and part of the environment, where teenage Alma is more active and is a lot bigger of a threat, and not necessarily part of the environment, but something that exists in it, but is also violent towards you. Whereas you feel as if you can't do anything against little girl Alma, but I mean, anytime teenage Alma would pop out of nowhere and act aggressively towards me, I would fire my gun instantly. Mm-hmm. Where little girl Alma never made me do that.
Yeah. Well, obviously you don't have small children.
You fire your guns at small children as well,
yeah. Constantly, just round after round. I think this would be a great time to transition to a quick plot recap, which I think we have all nominated / decided to force Benny to give, because none of us are really that comfortable actually talking about it, but, it's a game podcast, so we should probably talk about like the plot of the game. So I'm gonna turn it over to Benny. Benny, do the thing.
Well, wait. I think there's different. Like, I'm uncomfortable talking about it because I think the plot is stupid. I think you guys don't like talking about the plot because of a different point.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable talking about the forced pregnancies more than the...
Oh, yeah, see, okay, so I'm just saying there's a difference. I didn't mean to interrupt Benny, but I'm like, wait, okay.
Yeah.
I never said I was uncomfortable. I just think it's stupid.
Okay.
There's a difference.
Fair.
Yeah, let's unpack this bag of cats. All right, so how about a high level flyover of our plot? We're opening up on the game to find bad guy number 1, Paxton Fettel, basically being possessed by someone, and we don't have to be too precious about revealing things. We're pretty sure, even pretty early on, that it's Alma that has possessed him.
Spoiler alert from here on out, if that wasn't very obvious.
We are also, through many of the voicemails, conversations had with the rest of your team, we find out that we're basically pursuing an army of super soldiers psychically controlled by Paxton Fettel, which we've kind of alluded to earlier. Mm-hmm. So that is the vast majority of your opposition physically in the game. We're also uncovering a corporate espionage conspiracy leading to some really, I'll put it gently,
unsettling.
I was going to say unethical experimentation, human experimentation, resulting in like, what is it, 2 or 3 generations of experiments to create psychic super soldiers, basically, by way of forced impregnation of one of the key members of the plot.
Right. A child who is being held in a medically induced coma and then being forcibly impregnated with at least 2 characters, you and Paxton Fettel.
There's some darkness here and some ick.
Yeah.
Apparently, Kirk just doesn't care for the plot. I think it's pretty gross.
Yeah.
I also think that it's probably pretty hastily written.
Yeah.
It suffers from some pretty mundane failures of horror in general, and it's kind of unfortunate. I think that the rising action at the climax of the game is actually pretty spectacular. Mm-hmm. We've got some revelations about Alma and about the family heritage, let's say.
Yeah.
As we're leading up into that, her essentially being released, and then some escalating violence and science-based mishaps.
Yeah.
It's basically some sort of a sci-fi nuclear explosion. Like, there's some neat stuff that happens here, but there is no falling action. There is
no.
Where you would expect there to be as we call it, a denouement, there is none. It just brick wall, done, credits roll.
It reminded me of the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead remake, where it's just like story, hand, end of game. And I was like, okay, now hang on now.
I think there's a misunderstanding of how showing or conveying something that you think is meaningful and then cutting to black. Mm-hmm. I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of how that is supposed to be artistic or meaningful as opposed to lazy.
Yeah.
Like how in The Sopranos, cutting off in the middle of a sentence and rolling credits is, there's a lot of argument over how that is meaningful or creative. I think there's also a lazy response, which is shock value, and then hopefully you had some thoughts that you can linger on, because we don't have any to give you to think about.
So I think with anything that's in the horror genre, I think there's kind of 2 ways to approach it, which is, do you want your audience to jump? Do you want them to be scared? Or do you want to create a lasting feeling of unease, dread? There's some really strong parallels to Silent Hill in this game, particularly with the character of Alma and the character of Alessa. And in the movie version of Silent Hill, the end of that I thought was is a good parallel to this, because you have this same kind of thing. You have this orgy of violence at the end, where it's just this absolute,
hot.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. Like it's an icky, gross, child abuse and orgy of violence type of horror.
Oh no, I've never played it. I'm sorry I said hot.
Oh no. Well, I'm just referring to the movie here too. So like this would only take you 2 hours to find out. No, I'm keeping that hot in there. Now you have to live with that. But no, at the end of the movie, it leaves you. There's just like this sense of dread and unease, and things that should seem familiar and normal seeming unfamiliar and abnormal, and just like this lingering sense that things have not been put right. And I think that's what they wanted from this plot, but I think that they ran out of money or time or creativity or something, and it just, like, the slam cut at the end was so unsatisfying. And it honestly, in a game that spent so much time and effort making you feel uneasy, I swear to you, her hand came. So you're in a helicopter. Her hand comes up into the helicopter, and I laughed out fucking loud. I was just sitting there howling, laughing at the screen, and
yeah.
I'm like, that's not the reaction they wanted. I don't think. At least I hope not.
So here's the problem: they give you this jump scare that you just talked about, and then they cut to black, and I presume like they've resolved all of their surprises, or they've resolved everything that we haven't known up till then, or at least what we need to know to make the plot complete-ish, and then cutting to black as though we should ruminate on something that we've seen, but there's nothing left to ruminate on.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're a chapter short of a complete story here. And I know there's additional content, but it's a problem of the structure of the game as originally released. It feels as though there should be a little bit more to bring us down to close things out. And so, like, it's over, and I'm just like, okay, that's it. We've partaken of everything. Like I said, there's nothing left to ruminate on. Why have you chosen to do this to me?
I almost would go the opposite direction, and rather than say it needed another chapter, I would say it needed about 10 minutes less.
Or.
Yeah, I would say if you would have cut it, like, at the end of the action, rather than have that whole, like, wrapping up sequence and then the helicopter sequence, I think that would have been a much more satisfying, like, plot arc. But Kirk, I can see, I'm sorry, I can see that you're getting ready to say something. I didn't mean to cut you off, buddy.
No, I was just, so you have a very good point. And you know how we talked about how teenage Alma was always the more active in the environment, and she was always aggressive. So when you see the hand in her face coming over the edge of that helicopter at the end, you know, there's the mechanical failure of the helicopter that happens. And you're right, that ending, I mean, it got me the first time I played it, but the more and more I played it, I'm like, kind of like, why did she need to, like, crawl over the, like, this is a supernatural being that just appears out of nowhere. Right. So you bringing that up made me think, what would be a better ending than using the same scenario or the same thing? So what do you think of an ending where there is no mechanical failure of the helicopter, but maybe in your HUD it flickers or something, and maybe one of the other members of the helicopter suddenly gasps, like terrified, and you look to your right, and little girl Alma is sitting right there in the helicopter.
Yeah.
Equally stupid or better?
I think it's better because it implies that, because one of the things I didn't like about the ending of the game as it stands is that it implies like a physicality to her attacks that I was like, well, that runs totally counter, because I don't know that we specifically called it out, but in the game, it's straight up said, it's not implied, it's straight up said, her body's dead and has been for some time. Like, they have kept her dead body in a canister, but her attacking you is a psychic attack. Like, she is using her psychic powers and her ability to control other people to affect the environment, which is why I was fine with the fact that she used both a little girl form and the teenage form. That made sense to me. But the like hand over the side of the helicopter implied a physicality to it that I found comical.
I
think
agree.
I think having like the little girl sitting there would make sense, or even just like have the pilot like gasp, like you're saying, and then have the pilot turn and see like a flicker of her like sitting next to the pilot or something to imply that the pilot is being taken over by her spirit.
Yeah.
Something like that, where it's like, because if the whole game she's just been a spirit that's possessing people, then the fear, the thing that we should be concerned about, is her ability to continue to possess new people, not the fact that she's gonna like come like a zombie out of the grave at us and like throttle us.
This doesn't have to make it in, but like as I'm imagining this, if I'm the developer and I'm not already planning for a sequel or any of like the extraction point and all the supplementary stuff that they released, I'm envisioning like something similar, like we label it as an epilogue, not a chapter or whatever I don't remember what they call them. And we're in a cemetery and we've got her, maybe a rainy cemetery day, and we've got someone, maybe it's us standing over the grave, and we're seemingly have a little bit of closure for her. And then a la James 1, as things cut out, maybe there's some conversation. There's a shadow that isn't actually a shadow that moves as the flickers as she moves out of plain view, but you didn't notice it at first before we finally cut to black. And then we've got something to think about. Is she at rest? Is she not? What have we seen? What is the nature of this thing if we've released her from the canister? But at least like I always think I want to leave the viewer, I want to leave the audience with something to consider and a little bit of uncertainty. Yeah, for sure. This plot I did think was a little bit nonsensical. I didn't like how it ended, but it certainly didn't ruin the game for me. I really enjoyed, like, just moving a little bit towards ending thoughts here. I really liked this game. I'm really glad, Kirk, that you brought it to us. I had a blast with it, and I hadn't mentioned it up to this point, but this was my first ever playthrough, beginning to end. I feel like I'm gonna put like a balloon party noises and something here of a FPS game using like WASD and mouse controls. Like, I actually played through an FPS game the way you're supposed to. I didn't try and hack it into a controller, so I'm very proud of myself. But it was worth it for me to sit down and actually learn how to play this the right way, because it was a game that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, well, you have to play with keyboard and mouse. I mean, the later games, they do make it more controller friendly, but again, with the enemy AI, as smart as it is, and then being able to fully utilize that reflex time to its potential, keyboard and mouse, absolutely.
For what it's worth, there is a very good community profile on Steam, so if you do get this game on Steam, I played it with a controller perfectly successfully.
Okay.
I can see how it is still preferable to play it on keyboard and mouse. It doesn't map perfectly to a controller, but it is doable. So if you do not feel comfortable playing a first-person shooter with WASD and the mouse, you do not have to, but you ought to.
Yeah.
That or play the really awful Xbox 365 and PlayStation 3 ports in this game that were an absolute dumpster fire.
Dude, I played some of that. That was actually that was interesting. Anyway,
the graphics were super dumbed down. It felt like your character always felt like he was running through a swamp for some reason.
It was very sludgy for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate the translation from keyboard mouse to controller. That was fair. I didn't have too much to complain about that, but
Yeah.
I hate how it was like in that standard format instead of trying to stretch it, the aspect ratio to match a modern TV. It's like, come on. That's so simple to do. Yeah. Who cares if it looks obviously stretched? It's better than having bars at the side.
Oh,
come on.
Dude, and I fucking Benny knows I have pillar boxing.
Strong feelings.
Benny, did you have any kind of closing thoughts? And then I have one thing that I want to run through with this real quick after we all close out.
I will keep this very close. I just the game isn't perfect. It's good, but I think that I can't help but when I think about this game, thinking about its legacy and what it influences down the line. That's really having going back and playing this for the first time, looking back on games that I had played previous to this, but that were chronologically much later. You can see the influence of it. I could argue that you don't have Dead Space, at least not in the same way that we have it, without this game. Outlast 1 and 2, which are great horror experiences, especially if you want an experience where you do not have agency against the opposition, where you are purely the hunted with a short burning flashlight, except you have limited battery resources throughout the entire game. I think that you maybe even like Alan Wake and other experiences that use some moody atmosphere, and something about that feels relevant, but I'm not able to put that one specifically into frame with this game. But I think that it's got some echoes throughout, through time to other titles. So I think that it's maybe worth playing just to inform yourself retroactively.
Kirk, what about you, man?
Just, revolutionary AI is what I think of every time I think of this game. Again, though, plot, though, I think they just had, like, one of those bingo rollers, and as the balls came out, they were just like, J-horror, forcible impregnation. What? Tim, you're fired. Get the hell out of here. And first-person shooter. All right, well, that's what we're going to go with. It wasn't until the second game the plot actually made me uncomfortable, like the first game made you guys uncomfortable. So if you want to see or feel what made me uncomfortable, play F.E.A.R 2 to the very end, and you'll be like, yeah, that's... If you think F.E.A.R 1 was fucked up, this one will make you wince a little bit.
If forcibly impregnating medically induced coma-ridden little girls wasn't quite fucked up enough for you, play F.E.A.R 2.
I'm dead serious. It's a little more messed up than that.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Just get on YouTube after this and just look up the ending of F.E.A.R 2.
No, I won't.
Yeah, I don't think you'll get flagged for watching something like that, but you never know.
There's a list out there just for F.E.A.R watchers.
Yeah, it really makes you uncomfortable. But
which makes sense, because F.E.A.R watcher does sound like some kind of weird sex pervert that I wasn't previously aware of. Oh, that guy? Yeah, I used to work with that guy. He's a real F.E.A.R watcher, if you know what I mean.
And when he's watching it, he has like this weird, creepy grin on his face. Like, it's not...
While I was playing this game, I had a notepad up, and I just wrote my completely unfiltered thoughts, and I just want to read through some of them and get the guys' takes on it. So, well, if we like this, we'll come up with a name for the section that I'll edit in later on. But, yeah. So, here are Brent's completely unfiltered takes on F.E.A.R as he was playing it. First, whoever designed this game hated people's legs.
So much leg violence.
There's so many fucking legs getting blown off in this game. I can't count how many times I've come around a corner and just found a leg.
Also, shotgun is best gun.
Shotgun is best gun. Why does F.E.A.R never have any available backups to send? Is this a government agency run out of a fucking strip mall? This game is just Half-Life. Light puzzle elements, synchronicity events, out-of-control scientists, fucking ninjas.
Yeah, the ninjas.
And they just come and they go. They're like, all right, we're done with the ninjas now.
Right.
Those are cool, right? Remember those guys?
Yeah, you remember the ninjas? This one just says my dryer. That requires a little bit of explanation. So the scariest moment for me in this game, and I wanted to talk about it in the horror section, but I was like, this is not a universal experience, is I was going...
When almost doing her laundry?
Yeah. I was going down a hallway. I did mention that you do a lot of going down hallways. And I came around a corner, and I thought I saw Paxton Fettel, and then my washer load went off balance, and so behind me it went... and I jumped about 7 feet in the air.
See, it says that you were heightened. You were in a heightened state of awareness there. It was working.
This is not funny at all. It's just true. The elevator section in this game was the first time I ever had fun on an escort mission. I was like, this is great. Because she just stayed there, and then you go and you do things, and you come back. It's awesome.
I love that she barks at you the second you leave the elevator. Like, I'm sorry. Were you inconvenienced by me saving our asses?
Mm-hmm.
The unintentional comedy of the replica soldiers' responses when you go into slow-mo is so amazing. Like, I love when you hit the fucking... And they're like... Oh, no. Every time. Set me into fits of hysterics.
The audio distortion is fantastic. I love it.
So good. And finally, video games have taught me that helicopters have a 100% failure rate.
I'd like to add, too, that Peter Griffin in Family Guy was right, and when he made the comment, I don't understand this at all. Apparently everyone from Japan is either a 12-year-old girl or a monster.
Or both.
Yeah, in this case, actually both. So points for accuracy, apparently.
Yeah.
God, now I'm having flashbacks to Akira.
Lord. All right. Thank you all for joining us. Had a great time. We'll let you know on the Discord as soon as we figure out what we'll be talking about next. If you like what we're doing, please jump on the Discord, the YouTube. We're on Spotify, Amazon Music, all that good stuff. And with that, have a great time. We'll see you again soon.
Okay, right. So I was at an Irish pub up north with the wife, and then a family friend came with, and he, for the sake of it, he's gay. So after we get done having a bunch of drinks and having fun, we're going to leave, and we go to the restrooms. For people who chew or have dip or whatever, normally it's like this disgusting thing they put in their mouth and chew and whatever, but apparently they have like these self-contained little rectangular packets.
Yes.
That you chew on the packets instead, and it's less of a mess.
Yeah.
I know this now.
Okay.
But I've never been into that sort of thing, so I was completely ignorant of all this. So, after...
You've never been into mouth cancer?
No, never been into that.
Okay.
So, we're both standing at the urinal side by side, and I have my dick in my hand, and I'm looking down in the urinal, and I exclaim out loud, "What the fuck is in my toilet?" So, of course, prompts my friend to look over down in the toilet with my dick clearly in my hand. He looks down, and there's no way you couldn't have just seen my penis. He was kind of just going, yep.
Very nice.
I think he was just kind of. I hope like he was. He took it as like I was legitimately just concerned with what was at the bottom of the toilet. Not I was trying to trick my friend into showing him my dick.
Hey, look at this.
Yeah.
Yes. Sure is a
I
penis.
told that to my wife in the car. She bursted out laughing. Like, if he doesn't talk to you for a while, there's a reason.
Yeah. It's one of those penives.